one of my favorite topics is follow-up, right? And why is follow-up important, and how has it helped me in my career? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Financially Free Realtor. My name's James Michener, and this is Leslie Guiley. Leslie, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you too, James.
So one of my favorite topics is follow-up, right? And why is follow-up important, and how has it helped me in my career? How have you seen it help other agents? You're running a brokerage right now. You ran a huge brokerage before. So that was the talk I wanted to have today is fortunes and the follow-up, and how can follow-up separate you from other people, and how can it build your your business, and how can it keep that pipeline full, and how can it separate you from other real estate agents as well? So it's that discipline aspect of it. So.
Absolutely. I think it is absolutely the fortunes and the follow-up. And a lot of times clients will list with the agent that follows up with them the most.
Mm-hmm.
And there's statistics out there where, most of the sales happen after the fifth call, but most agents stop calling after the first or second time. I think it really does matter if you have an organized system of follow-up. Of course, you have to have some sort of CRM. A lot of them work, so pick your favorite. Do you have a favorite CRM, James?
Yeah, I do. So we use Follow Up Boss for our actual integrated, really touched system, and then we have Mojo Dialer, which you can use as a CRM and whatnot. The first one I ever used was Vulcan 7, but Leslie, to touch base on having a CRM and whatnot, I know a guy that did 250, 300 sales by just using his Google Calendar, but he followed that, right?
Right. That's a system, right? That's a system.
Do all those other calling systems help? Absolutely, they do. Because I did the same thing for a really long time. And then as soon as I switched out of it, which was pretty quick in my career, out of Google Calendar and whatnot, and into using Mojo or a Vulcan 7 or a Follow Up Boss, that's when my business changed, and that's when it made it a little bit more fun.
What did you do to organize your database so that you knew who to follow up with every day?
Started using the calendar link in Mojo and Follow Up Boss. So you can plug people into certain calendar days on when you want to follow up with them, whether that's every 5 days, every 3 days, every 12 days, or if you want to touch base with them every Monday or Friday, like I do with for sell by owners. That's how I break that down, And I think one of the most important things for follow-up is somebody will say, hey, follow up with me in a month, right? So somebody's going to wait, 25 to 30 days before they follow up. Big mistake. They're telling you that because that's how long they think it's going to take them. In reality, you need to follow up with them in half the time that they tell you, right? And everybody will say that. And honestly, maybe you have to do it a little bit sooner, just depending on how that conversation went. But no matter what, you cut that in half.
So I'm going to tell you, a common way is to organize them into A, B, and C leads, right? And A, you have an appointment with. B, they want to, do something within the next 90 days. C is they're further out than 90 days.
Yeah.
And it's always said that your money's in your C clients. So you have to have an organized way to follow up. So if you're an A client, you're going to meet with them an appointment, you're always going to set the next appointment. A B client, if you follow up with those on the first and third week of the month, and then your C clients, you call once a month, every time on the second week of the month. So how did you do yours? How often did you follow up with yours, and how did you organize your system?
So I had a similar system of that in the beginning, right? And then I got busy like everybody else does. And so I felt like some of those other leads were going by the wayside. So I had hot, warm, cold, and then I had sphere of influence, A team and B team and C team, right? So the A team I would talk to maybe every 45 to 60 days for my sphere of influence, my B team every 60 to 90 days, and then my C team every 90 to 120 days or so. And then when it came to actual leads that came in the pipeline, it would all depend on how that conversation went, right? Where was the location of the property? How bad did I want it? What was the price point and whatnot on how much I would follow up? But if I felt like it was a hot lead, I was calling them once or twice a week at least, right? And then my warm leads would be once a week to every 10 days or so. And then the cold leads would maybe be every 2 to 4 weeks or so. But I moved out of that hot, warm, cold system and moved into a calendar system. And I felt like that was just a little bit better for me. I call Monday through Friday. Rarely do I do weekends, and have I ever really done weekends? But those weekend calls, I would then call on Monday. So I'd take extra time on my Monday to add into my prospecting. So I was making sure that I caught up with those.
You scheduled people for the weekend, but you didn't call them on the weekend. You just brought those calls over to Monday.
Yeah. So how it works is if you want to follow up with somebody every 5 days and then it lands on a Saturday, well, if you don't call them, then it skips it. So you're out 2 weeks from that point. So I made sure I followed up with all my Saturday and Sunday leads. And on the first of the month, like when the cancel and expireds are coming out, you betcha there's like at least 4 hours of prospecting that's happening, because that's where a lot of those warm leads are going to be coming from.
How long did you spend calling people on a regular day?
An hour and a half, 2 hours. And then sometimes I'd do 3, just depending on how much lead flow is coming in and whatnot.
And then maybe on the first of the month, it'd be 4 hours because there'd be expireds and canceled.
Yeah, those are tough days too, but it got me to where I'm at. So I'm happy with that.
And did you do that 2, 3, 4 days a week? How many days a week did you do that?
Oh, I did it Monday through Friday.
5 days a week without fail.
Without fail. It's funny. My team knows that those are my calling hours, that, 8 to 11 are the hours you can't really get me. That's protected time right there.
Right. Then you were consistent.
Yeah. Consistency and discipline, if you have those in any aspect of your life, you're going to be able to dominate whatever you want to,
So let's talk about new leads. Someone you haven't talked to yet. How often do you follow up with them?
Yeah. So if I get like a website lead, I'm calling them 3 times a day for 5 days or so. And then it'll go to once a day the next week, touch base with them. But that's 3 phone calls. That's 1 to 2 text messages. That's at least 1 email as well, every single day for 5 days, right? And then we move into every single day after that, just once a day for the next week. And then that following week would be, every other day or so, until we've tried to hit them about 15 to 20 days. Then we'll put them in a cold file at that point because they're just not responding.
How do you do it 3 times a day? If you're calling for 2 hours, you call them, they answer. What do you set the next contact as?
You have to be like super obsessed with this in order for that to happen, right? Which I was. And what I would do is those hot leads that would come in through my websites, if they were listing leads, I would call them at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So right around those points. But I would have that list in my notes in my phone that these are the hot leads, and I would take those out and switch them out with other ones for that day or that week that would come in, so I didn't miss out on those guys. Because my prospecting hours were from 7:45 to 11 o'clock. So once I got done with that, I had to remember who to call during the lunch and the dinner. But usually I was so good at, I wanted it so bad, it didn't skip my mind. But yeah, there'd be hot listing leads that would come in that you would want to make sure you called all the time.
So did you just jump back to your desk at lunch and dinner time and make those calls? Or what do you mean you put them in your phone?
Yeah, so I put them in my notes, right? And I would just step away and be like, hey, babe, hey, kids, I got to just step away real quick. And I would make some of those calls. Usually it's only 1 to 5. It's not a lot to do that.
So you just use the notes app on your phone.
Yeah.
If you got someone, you had a conversation, then how'd you put it in your CRM?
I would just type in those notes or remember it. I was pretty good at remembering most of those notes. And honestly, now that I have Follow Up Boss and I have some other CRMs, it's easier to go in and just dial those if you remember. So
a lot
basically,
of them have apps on the phone that you can use and then type your notes real quick and set your next contact date.
Yeah. And that was in the beginning. I would use the Notes app, right? And then I started going into Mojo because the client would get transferred into my Mojo by my team manager or my assistant. Mm-hmm. And then I would just go into Mojo and I would know, okay, I just got this lead in HomeLight or whoever it was, or a website lead. I would just go into Mojo and make sure I called those through there, and then I could type in the notes right there. It's really simple. Follow Up Boss the same way.
Do you remember how long you followed up with someone? Like what the longest time was you followed up with someone before you got the listing?
So I just got a listing, 2 months ago? And it was 47 calls I had made to this person. Sold her property. She was super awesome. And then she just gave us another listing as well. So we'll sell a little over 1.5 million in deals from her for 47 follow-ups. Super great lady, right? And I had her in a 45-day follow-up. So it took me years to get to that point. But she was nice. She was great. And it wasn't that bad of a follow-up. It literally took 20 seconds each time I talked to her. Hey, Darlene, how are you? Good, James. How are you? We're still not selling, but we'll think of you. And then what did I do? I got a voicemail or a call, and she said, hey, James, we're ready to list. You've been so persistent, and we liked you. You weren't pushy. So we got that.
Nice. So you sold 1.5 million in real estate to her.
Yeah.
And if I did that, if I just did what would be common amount of commission, it would be about $45,000 total. And so if you made 47 calls, that's darn near $1,000 per call.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Yeah, great way to put that in perspective. I mean, and I look at that too. Honestly, sometimes I'll see how much I made for the year and then divide it by like a normal working person, maybe add like another 500 hours or something like that for the year and see what my hourly rate was. And I was like, damn, that's a really good hourly rate. But where does that hourly rate come from? 90% of that comes from my prospecting time, which is my follow-up time. Because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have the business that I do now.
So it's that consistency, it's that system, and just following up.
Yeah.
So when do you stop calling them?
That's a really good question. So I stopped calling them if they're rude, like to a point where it's like I just dread talking to this person, or I see their name come up and I'm like, no, I'm not going to deal with that. Because at a certain point, it's just not worth it, right? Because that one person takes away so much momentum for you and just so much happiness from you. And you have to have a lot of momentum and you have to have a lot of happiness in order to like do this, right? And you got to be very goal driven. So that's one of the criteria. If they've listed with somebody else or they just said, hey, I straight out changed my mind, like I'm not going to be doing anything, James, there's a lot of other leads that I can add into that. So I would just take that person out, fill the bucket with another person.
My favorite real estate coaches used to say, I'm going to call until they buy or tell me to die.
Yeah. Right. I've had people be jerks like that. So, one of the things I read early in my career was Grant Cardone, I think, said most times it's going to take 12 to 15 calls in order to get a lead, right?
Absolutely.
And that 12 to 15 calls to build a rapport, get them to trust you. And I've gotten so many callbacks from people that have been like, hey, you followed up with me for 6 months. I really appreciated that. You're a go-getter. Like, I want to use you as my agent. Okay, great, right? Because they want somebody that they know is going to work. That's not your typical real estate agent. That's going to be friendly on the phone instead of super salesy or pushy. And there's a lot of other guys that do the follow-up here in my town and other ones. But I always got the comment of, you were empathetic, you were nice, you followed up in a way that wasn't too pushy. And so we want to meet with you, James. And then I go to the appointment, and it's like I know them already, right? So it's not awkward.
Because they've been talking to you for 6 months.
Dude, sometimes making that first call and getting the appointment, it's like, whoa, this is kind of weird. Like, it's kind of like too easy. Like that girl that you're like, whoa, that's a little too easy. Like, what's going on here? Like, hey, I don't know. You want a little bit of a fight for that. But honestly, it makes the appointment a little bit easier. Like, you kind of know each other a little bit. So that's been a really, really nice part of that follow-up for me. Now, does it take work? Yeah, it takes a lot of work. And can it be a grind? Yeah, it can. But if you can go from living in a single wide trailer your first year in real estate to owning 20 houses and having your dream home, then yeah, why not do that, right? It makes such a big difference. And it's because of the follow-up. The fortune is in the follow-up for us.
And just be consistent.
Yeah. Be kind, be consistent, set your schedule, protect your schedule, because you would protect your schedule. Let's say if you had a 9-to-5 job, would you protect your schedule from anybody else that was trying to come in and make calls to you or send you emails outside of what your work day was? Yeah, you would. So why not protect your schedule and work as hard as you can while your family's doing XYZ so that you can get done with that activity or make enough money to where you don't have to be doing XYZ. So just protect your schedule and your time as if you're in a regular job. Most of the time, you're only going to have to protect it for 4 or 5 hours. You're not going to have to protect it for 8 or 9. The rest of the time will be pretty open at that point.
Right. Well, you said most days you're calling is 2 hours.
Yeah, and if I didn't have appointments after that, I mean, I'll follow up with my team and have my clients call me and stuff, but I'm done for the day. Because I did the most important activity that you could do, which was calling.
Good info, James.
Well, thank you. Follow up is a big thing. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment, leave a message for us.